On November 20th, 2025, Sandra Lee was standing in her dermatology office in Upland, California, with cameras rolling for Season 2 of her Lifetime show. She was doing what she'd done for 30 years, treating a patient, talking to the camera, holding a scalpel, and then her body started turning off. She thought it was a hot flash. She got sweaty, couldn't quite swallow her dinner, went home to her parents' house, the one a few minutes from the office, and tried to sleep. She couldn't, shooting pains in one leg. By morning, when she stretched out her left arm, the hand just slowly drooped, as if the muscles had quietly resigned. Her own words went thick in her mouth. This is the woman who has been watched, by some estimates, more than 7 billion times on the internet, popping cysts and draining blackheads. The woman whose hands are her entire career. And on that morning, she stood in her parents' kitchen, a board-certified dermatologist, the daughter of a dermatologist, and asked herself a question she could barely get out of her mouth. Am I having a stroke? She was. The MRI confirmed it. Ischemic. A blood vessel to her brain had clogged, and a piece of Sandra Lee's brain had died. Her words to People magazine in April 2026, when she finally went public, weren't softened. What essentially happened is I had a part of my brain that died. She is 55 years old. She is, on paper, one of the most successful internet doctors on the planet. And 5 months ago, she was relearning how to walk down a flight of stairs. To understand why this hit so hard and why her fans cried when they read it, you have to go back to the beginning. Because Sandra Lee's whole story is about hands, what they can do, what they can build, and what happens when suddenly they don't quite work right anymore. The girl from Flushing. Sandra Sue Pin Lee was born on December 20th, 1970, in the Flushing neighborhood of Queens, New York. Her father is Singaporean, her mother is Malaysian. They had immigrated to New York the year before she was born, in 1969, two people in their 20s who had crossed the Pacific looking for something better. Her father was a dermatologist. That detail matters more than almost anything else in this story. When Sandra was 5, the family moved to Southern California. She grew up there, the daughter of an Asian immigrant doctor in a sun-bleached suburb, and from a young age, she watched her father work. He was a soft-spoken man, by her own description, who used to play the ukulele for his patients to put them at ease. She has said in interviews that her warm, talkative bedside manner, the thing millions of viewers would later call her superpower, came directly from him. We have similar personalities, her father once told a writer for a magazine profile, but she has the advantage of being prettier. She went to UCLA for undergrad. While she was there, she worked part-time as a medical assistant for an allergist in downtown Los Angeles, learning the rhythm of a clinic from the inside. Then she went east, to Drexel University College of Medicine in Philadelphia, where she graduated in 1998. She did her internship in internal medicine at Allegheny General Hospital in Pittsburgh, then her dermatology residency at Southern Illinois University. After that, she went to San Diego to train in laser, cosmetic, and surgical dermatology. This is not a reality TV resume. This is the resume of a serious surgeon, and there was a boy. There was always Jeffrey Rebish. They met on orientation day at Drexel, in the very first hours of medical school. He thought he was going to be an orthopedic surgeon, but then he saw how much Sandra loved dermatology, and he changed his entire career trajectory because of her. They married on May 28, 2000. Two doctors, no drama, settled into a quiet practice called Skin Physicians and Surgeons in Upland, California, where Sandra eventually worked alongside her own father, and for the next 14 years that's the life she lived. 2 sons, a husband she ran the practice with, a father a few feet down the hall, anonymous, comfortable, completely off the internet's radar. So how did this small-town dermatologist, the kind who cuts out skin cancers and stitches up torn earlobes, become a global brand? The answer is one of the strangest accidents in modern internet history, the accident that made her famous. In 2014, Sandra Lee opened an Instagram account. She has admitted, openly, that she had no plan for it. She posted pictures of food, pictures of golf, pictures of her kids, the kind of thing every dermatologist with a phone was doing, but she also, on a whim, started posting little clips from her work. A blackhead extraction, a small cyst, the unglamorous middle of a procedure most dermatologists farm out to estheticians because insurance won't cover it and because, in her own words, it's tedious labor. She told GQ, "Early on I posted a blackhead extraction video and I noticed an increase in interest. I thought that was very strange, so I did it again right away and I got the same reaction." That second video is, in a real sense, the moment her old life ended, because somewhere out there on the internet a community already existed. They called themselves Popaholics. They had their own Reddit forum, they had their own grainy YouTube heroes, like a doctor in New Delhi named Vikram Yadav who removed enormous blackheads from sun-damaged noses. The Popaholics had been operating in the shadows for years, and they had one chronic complaint about the videos they were watching. The lighting was bad, the cameras were shaky, the conditions were unsanitary. They were starved, desperately, for someone with real medical training to give them what they wanted. And here was Sandra Lee, board-certified, camera-ready, with a never-ending waiting room of people who needed extractions. She started uploading to YouTube and gave herself a name, Dr. Pimple Popper. Within 3 years, she would tell Yahoo she had over 2 billion views and 10 million followers across platforms. The numbers kept climbing from there. Today, most reliable sources put her total lifetime views well into the billions. One of her earliest viral hits was a man with rhinophyma, a swollen, bumpy nose condition that often comes with age. He was an octogenarian. She offered him a deal. She'd remove the blackheads from his nose for free if he let her film it. He said yes. The video of long ribbons of sebum coming out of an old man's nose like, in one writer's description, Parmesan cheese run through a rasp, has been watched millions of times. She later told that man on camera, "You were actually the start of all this. I don't know if that's something you're really proud of or not, but I am." The Popaholics had found their queen, and Sandra Lee, almost despite herself, had stumbled into one of the most lucrative niches on the internet. But going viral on a free platform is one thing, building a real business is another. And what Sandra Lee did next is the part most people don't understand. Dr. Pimple Popper, LLC. In 2017, 3 years after that first accidental Instagram clip, she launched her own skincare line. She called it SLMD Skincare. The first product was an acne system, because of course it was. Then came retinols, moisturizers, exfoliants, sunscreens, real formulations, science-backed, sold direct to consumers. In 2018, TLC came calling. The TV series Dr. Pimple Popper premiered on July 11, 2018. It ran for 9 seasons. It won her multiple Critics' Choice Real TV Awards for Female Star of the Year. By the time the show ended its TLC run in 2023, she was one of the most recognizable doctors on American television, and not because of glossy magazine covers, because she had built her audience one cyst at a time. There was a real business problem in the background, though. YouTube struggled to monetize her content. Her videos were graphic by definition, and advertisers shied away. She adapted. She moved chunks of her catalog to subscription platforms. She published a book, Put Your Best Face Forward. She became a regular on shows like Jimmy Kimmel Live and The Doctors. She built, layer by layer, a business that didn't depend on a single platform's mood. The estimates of her net worth vary wildly. The lower-end figures sit around $7 million. Celebrity net worth, in an April 2026 valuation, puts it at $20 million. The truth is probably somewhere in there, and it's not really the point. The point is that a woman who once worked as a part-time medical assistant in downtown LA had built, through her own hands and a pair of latex gloves, something practically nobody in dermatology had ever built before. But here's the part nobody saw on TV. Behind the empire, 2 boys were growing up. And behind the boys, a marriage was quietly waiting for its turn. The Quiet House. Sandra and Jeffrey have 2 sons, both adults now, both studying on the East Coast. In the year leading up to November 2025, the Lee Rebish household went through one of the slowest, most ordinary tragedies of middle age. The youngest boy went off to college. And just like that, the home that had been the center of Sandra's life for 2 decades emptied out. She and Jeffrey downsized to a smaller place in Los Angeles. They were starting over in a way. 2 doctors in their 50s, married for 25 years, learning what it feels like to eat dinner in a quiet kitchen. She has been remarkably honest about how strange it felt. In her interview with People, she said, "It's a transitional phase. It marks a significant change. These kids no longer require your care." Then she added a line her husband had said to her, almost as a warning. "Once they head to college, they may never return home." And then, in a quote that lands differently in light of what was about to happen, she said something about her marriage. "I've observed 2 types of couples, those who always come together and those who arrive separately. I find it intriguing to consider what kind of couple we will become." She didn't know, when she was thinking about that question in the fall of 2025, that the answer was about to be forced on her in the most violent way imaginable, because in a few weeks she'd be in an ambulance, the morning she couldn't walk down the stairs. November 20th, 2025. The cameras were rolling at her practice in Upland for Season 2 of Dr. Pimple Popper breaking out. She was working a normal day, patients in chairs, procedures on schedule. And then, mid-shift, something went wrong inside her body. It happened while I was filming the show, she told People. I had what I thought was a hot flash. I got super sweaty and didn't feel like myself. She is a 55-year-old woman. A hot flash in that moment was a perfectly reasonable thing to assume. She finished filming, she got in her car, she drove not to her own house but to her parents' house, which was closer to the office, the way she often did during shoot weeks. Her parents, both still alive, both in her life, both, in the case of her father, a fellow dermatologist. That night the symptoms got worse. I just felt very restless, she said. In one leg I kept feeling shooting pains. She couldn't sleep. She got up to find something to eat and noticed she was struggling to walk down the stairs in her parents' house. Stairs she had walked 1,000 times. By morning, she could not deny what was happening. She held her left arm out, and her hand just collapsed. Her speech wasn't right. She was a doctor, the daughter of a doctor, married to a doctor. She knew the signs. The acronym is Be Fast, Balance, Eyes, Face, Arms, Speech, Time. She had 4 out of 5. She still hesitated. Her father is the one who ended the hesitation. He looked at her and told her plainly that she needed to go to the emergency room. Now. At the hospital, the MRI told the story. Ischemic stroke. The kind that accounts for about 87% of all strokes. A clot somewhere in a blood vessel feeding her brain had cut off the oxygen. Cells had starved. Tissue was gone. Her response, when she described it later, is one of the most honest things a doctor has ever said about being a patient. It was just a shock. As a physician, I couldn't deny that I had slurred speech, that I was having weakness on one side, but I was like, well, this is a dream, right? It wasn't. She halted filming immediately, and the woman who had built a career on her hands began the slow process of trying to get them back, learning to be a patient. For 2 months, Sandra Lee disappeared from public life. She did not announce it. She did not post about it. She went into physical therapy and occupational therapy, working on what she called very basic things. Balance, walking, movement. Above all, her hands. The left hand was the one that had betrayed her. Not her dominant hand, thankfully. She is right-handed. But for a surgeon, your non-dominant hand isn't a passenger. It's the hand that holds the skin taut, that stabilizes, that braces. Without it, you can't operate. She has been candid about how scared she was. I don't like that I don't have total control of my left hand, she told People, or that the grip wasn't as strong. If I feel like I'm not at my best, it's very scary. She returned to work in January 2026. Her own description of going back is, again, completely unvarnished. It was very scary for me. There's a lot of PTSD because it happened while I was filming the show. She didn't immediately do surgery. She told the interviewer at Pau Zerwind in late April 2026 that there's no rule in medicine that forces a doctor who has had a stroke to take time off. If you feel capable of working the next day, you can work like the next hour afterwards. But she didn't want to. She said, I could do surgery, but I really didn't feel right doing that because it's really important for me to take great care of my patients. She is now on blood thinners. She continues physical therapy at home. By her own admission, when she gets stressed, the speech still slips. I notice it right now that I don't speak exactly the way I used to, she told People. You're really embarrassed to speak because you notice it. She is a woman whose entire brand is talking on camera, and every time she opens her mouth in front of a microphone, she hears the difference. But there's one more piece to this story, and it's the part that explains why she finally decided, after months of silence, to go public. The silence she broke on purpose. Sandra Lee did not have to tell anyone. Her recovery was largely complete. The show was returning. The cameras had no reason to know. She chose instead to put the entire story on the cover of People magazine the week of April 14, 2026, days before the season premiere of Dr. Pimple Popper, breaking out on April 20. When asked why, she gave an answer that is, in some ways, the most revealing line in this entire story. In Asian cultures in particular, they don't tell people they've had a stroke because it can be seen as a sign of weakness. I want to get the word out that if you have symptoms like I had, make sure you see your doctor. Take care of yourself. She was thinking about the immigrants like her parents, about the Asian American women in their 50s watching her show, about every person who would feel a hot flash and an unsteady leg and explain it away, because explaining it away is what their family taught them to do. She told the truth on the cover of a national magazine, because she did not want anybody else to lose 2 months of their life, or worse, before they figured out what was happening. And then she said one more thing, in passing, that's worth sitting with. This was the first time I pondered, you have children. Will you be there for them? Will you live to see your grandchildren? That is a 55-year-old woman in a quiet new house with her husband of 25 years, with 2 sons studying on the other side of the country, asking the only question that actually matters. She doesn't have the answer. None of us do. What she does have is a left hand that mostly works again, a practice she's still running, a show that's still on the air, and a piece of brain that, in her own blunt words, died. Watch her on the new season and you'll see the same warm woman who built this entire empire one extraction at a time. You might catch a hesitation in her speech if you're listening for it. You might not. She is, by her own measure, pretty much back to normal, but she is not the same, and by going public she made sure none of us get to look away from why. So I want to ask you something specific. Sandra Lee said she stayed quiet partly because in her father's culture, having a stroke is treated as weakness. If someone you loved, a parent, a grandparent, a partner, started slurring their words and dropping their hand the way she did, do you actually know what to do? Do you know the signs? Drop a BEFAST in the comments if you do, and tell me about the person you'd want to make sure you'd notice it for. I read every single one. If this kind of full story, no rushing breakdown is what you come here for, hit subscribe so the next one finds you. There's another one I'm working on right now I think you're going to want to see.